Is Polkadot an L0 or L1 chain? What is Polkadot? What is Polkadot governance? Let's talk about Polkadot scalability in terms of throughput, right? How performant is Polkadot? And if you're interested in Polkadot, how do you get started with Polkadot as a builder, right? What are the different avenues of building, how to build on Polkadot, and how to fund your project? And last but not least, what are the Polkadot wallets that exist, right? So today we're going to talk about all of this, and we're going to start with the intro of what is Polkadot, right? My name is Bruno. I'm active in the Polkadot community. Um, I've been in the blockchain space for a little over 4 years, I believe now. It's January, so 2025. And previously, I worked at Parity as an engineer at Parity, and I joined Parity um, because I believed in the vision of Polkadot. So, for some of you who do not know, right, Polkadot uh, came from the vision of Dr. Gavin Woods, co-founder of Ethereum, creator of the Solidity programming language, CTO of Ethereum, right? And when he was building Ethereum with the other co-founders, they really never meant it to be anything more than just a prototype, right? Let's see if we can get this working. Like Bitcoin worked, right? And Bitcoin's kind of like a simple calculator where you can subtract one from one account and add one to the other account and so on, right? Subtraction and addition and such. So let's take it to the next level, right? Kind of like when we had cell phones. We had basic cell phones like Blackberries and such. And then the iPhone came along with the concept of an app store where you can have a phone that has applications, many apps on it, right? So that's where it's like Bitcoin worked. All right, let's try to create one that does more than just one thing, that you can have software, multiple apps living on there in the form of what, let's call it smart contracts, right? So that was the birth of Ethereum, and it took off. Uh, but it was never, production ready, and that's why we see a lot of scalability issue nowadays. It's very slow to evolve, and Gav wanted to build. He had all these ideas that came out of that project, and he's like, I need to build this. Ethereum isn't going to be a good vehicle for that, and he branched off. He created Parity Technologies and created Polkadot, right? And Polkadot evolves. So Polkadot from day zero, the the Polkadot blockchain can be upgraded through runtime upgrades. So it's been changing, been evolving, it's been iterating. It's like a moving blockchain that evolves, right? So that's where I worked at Parity before, and then right after that, I was co-founder at Rogue, an engineering company, blockchain engineering company in the Web3 space, and we created Pop Network, Pop CLI tool, and now I'm educating how to build on Polkadot. So let's get started. So one could say that Polkadot is a global supercomputer, right? You could say that about Ethereum. Okay, Ethereum is a global supercomputer where we can upload logic to this global supercomputer that's kind of living in the cloud, right? And some key properties of this global supercomputer is that it's decentralized, right? The community sustains it all over the world, and it's resilient, right? Software that you put on there, really, it's going to keep going, right? The only way it can go down is if like the governance behind it deems it, the on-chain governance says like, okay, we want to take the software down. So it's got to be an on-chain kind of action. Otherwise, it'll just keep going and it'll keep being sustained by that global supercomputer. So in essence, Polkadot is a platform for building true Web3 protocols. So some of you that have been in the Polkadot ecosystem for a while, is Polkadot an L0 or an L1 chain, right? So in the beginning stages, to kind of discuss that, in the beginning stages, Polkadot was said to be an L0 blockchain that could support parachains, these sharded blockchains that can be connected to this L0 blockchain that we call the relay chain. So the L0 Polkadot blockchain is what we call the relay chain. And the relay chain, it verifies the parachain blocks, the sharded blockchains that kind of live on top of it that are connected to this relay chain, right? And it just verifies and validates the blocks that these parachains produces and gives it its finality stamp and says, okay, your block is good. We're including you into the Polkadot relay chain. So you inherit that economic security because Polkadot is a proof of stake network, right? So that's how the story started, and that was before rollups existed in Ethereum. That's before uh, teams started trying to like solve scalability problems on Ethereum in the form of rollups, right? And then this rollup narrative started happening in Ethereum, where it's like all these blockchains that are rollups that roll up to Ethereum, and then Polkadot community was like, wait, that's kind of like that's kind of like what we do. So then the narrative started becoming so that it's easier to understand for people that, okay, maybe the relay chain, we can say it's an L1 chain and all these parachains are rollups, right? So if we were to say that, there's about 50 active rollups right now in production. And this is according to Sean Tabrizi, and it's driving 13 million transactions across 300,000 active accounts per month on average, right? So this is now. And so I would say like parachains are akin to rollups. Some in the deep tech community, would argue this. And in fact, there was a Twitter post not too long ago where there was that discussion. Like this person, I'm not familiar who this person is, but they said it's so funny that this company here refuses to call their rollup a rollup. Meanwhile, Polkadot insists on calling their non-rollups rollups, right? And that kind of like instigated like a follow up of comments here, and it's like, oh, in my opinion, the idea is to try to catch up to the rest of the market to what Polkadot has created using terms people understand. Get technical all you want, but Polkadot allows you to build a roll up with L1 perks and such, right? And then they're like, oh, I'm going to get technical. And then this person here, he's a core engineer, or he was a core engineer at Parity, and he's saying rollups submit transaction data on data availability. And so they went off, and started discussing like, is it a rollup or is it not a rollup? At the end of the day, it's a bit more. Parachains are a bit more than just rollups because of the relay chain's consensus mechanism. So the way that like Polkadot, the relay chain, does consensus and was architected is very, very different than other blockchains. But you can think that it's akin to a rollup, right? So it's this global supercomputer where you can have these sharded blockchains, aka parachains, that can connect to it and submit their blocks for final validation and finalization. Okay, and so that's a bit of like L0 versus L1. And just to tell you, this is all going to go away too, because the future of Polkadot is with Jam, JAM. And Jam is something that Dr. Gavin Wood is working on with several teams. And you could say it's like it's going to be a new kind of protocol, but it's going to be an expansion of Polkadot you can think of, where you can have services run instead of like thinking of like smart contracts running on a blockchain or parachains running on a blockchain. Uh, we're abstracting all of that away, and we're just saying you can run a service. A service can be a parachain. A service can be a smart contract, a Solidity smart contract. A service can be some Rust code or some Python code. So when that happens, parachains will be able to run as a service, and then for sure, then they'll be concretely L1 blockchains. Okay, so that discussion will be finalized. But at the end of the day, Polkadot is a global supercomputer, and we're going to go with that narrative. But what else is Polkadot, right? So Polkadot is a repo, an open source repo. It's one of the largest open source projects you can see right there on my screen. Polkadot SDK, right? That's Polkadot, and there's a ton of activity, a ton of contribution. It's a great project to work on if you like open source projects. And you can see, here's the repo. It consists of several folders. One of them that I want to point out is Substrate. So Substrate, this folder here, this is actually a Rust-based blockchain framework. So Substrate was used to create Polkadot. This blockchain framework using Rust, right? It was used to create Polkadot. It was actually hand in hand, like as Polkadot was being created, uh, Substrate was kind of like getting created in parallel. But at the end of the day, Substrate was used to create Polkadot. You could say that Polkadot is like a superset of Substrate. Okay. You can use the Substrate framework to create your own blockchain, to create your own parachain, or your blockchain that has nothing to do with Polkadot. If you want to create like what we call a solo chain that's not connected to the Polkadot network, you can use the Substrate Rust framework for that. Okay. So that's easy. That's good to know, right? It's an excellent framework. I have another video that actually describes this framework and what exactly it is and how to work with it if you want to build a blockchain. What else? What is Polkadot? Polkadot is producing blocks. So we're looking at my screen on average 6 second block time, right? So some of you are like, well, this other blockchain that I know it does it in 1 second, but it comes down to block the quality of the block space, right? This is this 6 second block time here. It's secured by $1 billion network. So the blocks that are finalized, right, from the parachains with this uh, relay chain here, we're looking at the relay chain, the Polkadot relay chain, right? Every 6 seconds, uh, we produce a block here. And like if I look at this block, let's look at this latest block, right? You're going to see several things in there. One of them is called parachain inclusion, right? So it's including a parachains block in there with the $1 billion security, right? So always think about that, like when you're analyzing other blockchains, like, okay, it's 1 second, 6 seconds, 12 second, but what kind of quality block space, right? And one of them is the security that you want to think about that I'm getting here, right? And here you're getting very, very good security. Okay. So this is the relay chain. This is a UI that's actually connected to an RPC node of Polkadot. Okay. That's what we're looking at here. So just want to point out that this is Polkadot as well, right? What else is Polkadot? Well, what we're looking at right now, these are all the servers in the community, right? It's a community-led proof of stake protocol, right? So you're looking at the servers that are sustaining the protocol right now. And it's a beautiful thing. It's decentralized. It's all over the world. And you can see there's a little section here where you can see the map, right? And these are the servers that are sustaining the network, that are keeping Polkadot alive, that are producing blocks, right? And it's all distributed, right? And it's all decentralized. And the other thing that you notice here is that it's how do you say, like these servers is what we in Polkadot language we call validators, right? They're validating the blocks of the parachains, and it's happening on average every 6 seconds, right? So these are nodes that are running in the network. Okay, so this is also like when I describe Polkadot, I like to describe it in this way. This is also Polkadot, right? Polkadot also has the SDK that I showed you, Polkadot SDK. It has Rust docs. So if you want to get really technical and understand, if we go back to this Polkadot SDK repo, like, how do all these folders, like there's a ton of code here, Rust code, right? The beautiful thing about the Rust code is that it's really well documented. Like if I drop into, let's say like into frame folder here and I say asset conversion, what is that, right? And you can see there's a README, right? It's really well documented. This palette in Polkadot terms, it's a Rust module. This Rust module allows assets to be converted from one type to another by means of a constant product formula. The palette is based on Uniswap v2 logic. Cool. This palette allows you to create liquidity pool for two assets and so on, right? So even if I were to go into the actual source code, you're going to see that it still has documentation in the source code, right? Like, look at that, right? It's all there, super well documented, right? And it's open source. And by the way, all these what we call palettes, these Rust modules that you can use in your blockchain, if you want to create your own blockchain, right? Polkadot uses a lot of these. These have all been audited by a third-party firm. Okay, so that's good to know. So if you want to go deeper into the actual technical details of Polkadot, then there's the Polkadot SDK Rust docs, and that's what you're seeing on the screen, where you can start drilling down into the different components of Polkadot. You can drill down specifically into Polkadot, right, the relay chain, or you can drill down into the substrate Rust-based blockchain framework, right? So that's all there if you want to go really deep into the technical understanding of Polkadot. So just want to highlight that this is also part of Polkadot, right? So we're going down the rabbit hole of what Polkadot is. Polkadot, if we go back to the UI here, Polkadot happens to have this slide here, the most advanced, decentralized, on-chain, resilient governance system. And we call that OpenGov. So OpenGov is Polkadot's governance system, and it's one of the successes of Polkadot. It took off, and because, like I said, Polkadot, you can do what we call runtime upgrades, and you can upgrade the blockchain's code as many times as you want to, as long as it gets passed by governance, right? On-chain governance. Well, the governance system itself has improved its version. We had governance V1, we have governance V2, which is the one we have now, and it's been iterated upon, right? And it's really advanced. And that's what we see actually in this UI here. Let me show you. Governance tab. All of this is about governance. So if we look like, for example, referenda. So referenda, these are referendas that the community create. So they're proposing certain actions, and you can go here and you can vote. You can say, I want to vote, and you can see it'll pull up my wallet here and it'll say, okay, how many do you want to vote with one conviction? Do you want to vote with twice as conviction? So like if I have 10 dot, if I vote with one conviction, it's going to be 10 dot, right? So if I vote with twice as conviction, it's going to be twice the voting power of 10 dot. But then I have to have my tokens held for 14 days. So it's up to me how strong of a conviction I want, because you can see here the days increase, right? But that's possible for me to vote on one of these referenda, right? Like the only thing here that you don't really see in this referenda, right, in these referendas here, is like details like what exactly are they proposing, right? So there is a UI called Polk Assembly that is a better UI. Here it is. It's a better UI at looking at what we just saw. That was like a little bit too technical. It says the ultimate hub for Polkadot governance. So if we launch the app and say Polkadot, you're going to see that the UI here is more friendly. It's easier to see. It's like it's the same on-chain data, right? It's working off of the same on-chain data. It's connecting to an RPC node, but it's presenting it in a more visual, friendlier way. So, for example, you can see here's the treasury, Polkadot treasury. It's got about right now 184 million uh, in US dollar terms, and it's got 30 million dot, and it's got some other assets as well. Like even if I click on the details, you can see this is all part of the treasury. The treasury owns these, right? Interesting, right? Very sophisticated. So like if I go back to this more technical UI here, if I go to governance and I click on treasury, you can see here, it's going to pull up here, the spendable. It's got 13 million dot spendable. Okay, so uh, this is available. It's in the hands of the Polkadot community to spend in whatever way the community votes upon, right? And on the right, you see the spend period, 24 days. That means that 24 days from now, the Treasury is going to execute a function, a Rust function, where it's going to um, spend, it's going to allocate whatever funds that have been approved for whichever proposals have been approved. Okay, so actually you can see here approved, right? These have already been approved. So 24 days from now, these accounts will get paid. Okay, So that's something interesting. And if the amount, so if we go back to that nice UI, let's go back there. This one, was it here? Here it is. Yeah, let me just do a refresh just to make sure we have the most recent data. So yeah, like, okay, so there we go. 184, right? Uh, 27 million dot, 30 million, let's see. And you can see the relay chain, that's the treasury where we're looking at. The treasury is on the relay chain. It's got that 13.93 that we saw, right? And on the right-hand side here, you can see there's going to be 139,000 dot that will be burnt. And it says, if the treasury ends a spend period without spending all of its funds, right, that 13 million, uh, it suffers a burn of percentage of its funds. So if it doesn't spend all of its funds, this is the amount that will get burnt. Okay. So that's going to happen 8 days from now. And so the other thing that you see this is, UI for Polkadot governance. It's representing actions that are happening on chain. You can see that there's different tracks here. Big spender track, medium spender, small spender. So if we look at medium spender, for example, these are proposals that have been opened, on-chain proposals that have been opened, and you can see their status, right? Like if we click on this one here, ideal network, this is a good one. So you can see the account, the beneficiary account is right there, and the amount is there. So right now, it's technically possible for one to create a proposal to either receive the asset in DOT, the DOT token, or USDC. Okay, that wasn't possible before. Before it was only DOT. Now it's technically possible to also specify USDC. So this group here, and this is an account, by the way, this is an on-chain account. Most likely it's a multi-sig account or a pure proxy. Okay, so they specified USDC, and here's their proposal, right? So this metadata is not on chain. Okay, just so you know, like that's why when we actually saw this representation here, referenda, like if we try to pair it, right? Like this is number 1383. So if we go back here, let's see, referenda, the UI, and we do a refresh here. So let's see, it's reloading. And give that a moment. So referenda, we should see here 1383, medium spender, right? So medium spender, 1383, there's 1383, Ideal Labs, right? You can see. And what you see here, you don't see the metadata, right? Because like that's just really long text. But you see the ID here, 1383, and you see the extrinsic that they had to create, this group had to create in order to create this referenda, right? So this is an on-chain extrinsic that they had to create. Oh, this is 1382. Let's go to 1383. Yeah, 1383. This is an on-chain extrinsic. An extrinsic is an external, like an intent of like what you want to execute on the blockchain. And once it gets executed, uh, like it's like a command that you want to execute on the blockchain. And once it goes into the blockchain, it becomes what we call a transaction, right? Which is what the world knows in terms of blockchain terminology. So this ends up being a transaction on the blockchain once it's executed on the blockchain, right? So like, for example, this one's treasury.spend, right? So if I were to go here to developer extrinsics, these are all the extrinsics that are available on this blockchain, which remember, this is the Polkadot relay chain. And I say, okay, these are all the pallets that are on the relay chain, right? Those Rust modules. And it was I think, yeah, treasury.spend, right? So this is a treasury palette, treasury module. So it's got all the treasury functionality, and this will execute the different dispatchables or functions. And here's the spend, right? So you can start creating your spend here, and you have to understand how this all works, right? In order to create it, right? And that's what that team did. And so if we go back to the poke assembly, we can see here, we can read up what they're proposing, the problem that they're solving and such. And then you can see that you can cast your own vote, right? Just like you could cast it in the other UI. This UI is a little bit more friendly. It connects to your on-chain account, and you can cast A or nay, right? With whatever amount of dot you want to vote with, right? And you can see the details here. There's like the voting is a little bit sophisticated. You can see that it's estimated that the proposal will pass in 19 days. It's 99.8% in favor. You can see how many dot is in favor versus how many dot is not in favor, right? And then there's details, voting details here. Okay. So this is the governance system, like high level, right? It's a lot more involved than that, but at least you can see that it's on chain, right? This is represented on chain. And if they get approved, they're going to get that amount so that they can work on their project, right? And the community is voting on it. A lot of times, like there will be comments, like here, there's 13 comments, right? People will say, I like this, I don't like this, or follow up questions. And there's also like usually YouTube commentary where the community will go on YouTube and this team will be interviewed and such. So there's a lot happening around the governance. There's also like I'm describing like off-chain components also that are happening, right? Like the YouTube. So that's Polkadot's governance. So going back to the architecture, right? Let's look at this diagram. So take a look at this for a second. So what you can see here, this ring here, this is what we've been looking at. This is the relay chain, right? And this relay chain, this you can see that we see the pair chains around it. So each one of these, it's a pair chain, right? There's like around about on average, like there's probably like, let's see how many pair chains there are on Polkadot right now. If we go to that nice Polkadot.js UI, there's a network tab and we click on pair chains and we'll see the pair chains that are active on Polkadot that are connected to Polkadot. And you can see right now there's 45 pair chains connected to Polkadot in production, right? So remember, these are akin to like rollups. So each one of these is like a specialized blockchain, right? Like Asset Hub is a blockchain that has to do with various different types of assets. If I open this up, I'll open it in a new tab, I'll show you. Collectives has to do with like setting up on-chain collectives, which is super useful, right? Especially for governance. Bridge Hub, that has to do with bridges. There's more than one bridge being developed in the ecosystem, trustless bridges. People chain has to do with identity, very interesting. And there's several other blockchains here that you could play around, like click on, and they have their own websites and stuff. Like Hydration is a DeFi parachain, a lot of features. Interlay has to do with it's got a novel way of like uh, working with Bitcoin on Polkadot. And then kill has to do with identity and so on. Okay, so different specialized blockchains that are akin to rollups that are connected and getting their blocks finalized. So like you can see Asset Hub here. I opened it up in a new tab. So like you can see it's producing blocks, right? 8 million and some, right? On average every 12 seconds. And what's interesting is here you can see it says 24 million block. Wait, does that make sense? Like I thought we saw 8 million. Well, we did. This is the block, the relay chains block, Polkadot relay chains block, where Asset Hub's block got included. And then this is where it officially got backed. Okay, so the detail is right there. Pretty cool, right? So these are all connected here. So if we go back here and look at that diagram, so we have all these pair chains that are connected, right? And the way that they connect is via core time. So previously in the old version, Polkadot V1, it was through leases. Like you would bid, like you go in an auction, and sometimes it was a crowd loan auction, and you'd bid for like a 2-year lease on Polkadot, right? And then Polkadot decided, okay, we're going to come up with a better way. We're going to come up like, because like essentially what we're giving to these pair chains, we're giving them access to cores on Polkadot, right? Cores on the Polkadot relay chain, right? Which where are these cores? If you remember, if we go back to that here, right? There, here are the cores, right? There, these are this is Polkadot, right? Here are the cores. They're all over, right? And it's computing power, right? So this concept that like we're actually like um, offering cores as a service, right? So like this is where what we talk about core time. So you're actually the narrative now in Polkadot V2, which is where we're at right now. It's like you can purchase core time. You can purchase the usage of one of these cores. So you can do that on demand. So as needed basis, right? Because some blockchains, well, they don't need to like use a core like, you know, every day, right? Maybe they only need to like use a core every once in a while. Or you can purchase the core in bulk time and say like, okay, no, I want to commit and I'm going to buy like, core time that's equivalent of like uh, 3 months, right? And go. And there's different core time providers out there, on-chain core time providers. So there's some that are creating marketplaces around there. So like you can kind of bid on core time and get cheaper deals and such. So that's how you do it now with if you want to have like a roll up, a pair chain that you want to connect to the relay chain, you need to purchase the core time, right? And there's actually like that's where you saw the network tab. If you click on core time, you can see a bit of the UI there. And there's a tab called sale. And this is where you can actually go here and you can see there will be some providers here. Let's see. I believe there's a provider somewhere here. So let's see, sale. Hmm. Oh, let's see. Yeah, sale number 5. Okay. So down here, core time providers, right? These are like if I click on Elastic, for example, you can see that you can connect your wallet and you can actually purchase core time with Elastic. So that's there. There's different providers and you check them out. The other one is Region X. They have a creative way of like purchasing core time. So you'll need if you're going to build a parachain, you're going to need some type of core time. Going to need to purchase core time in order to get your parachain running. Okay, so that's a little bit of the architecture there. These are you could think of these as the validators, right? And they're providing the cores, right? So let's continue. So Polkadot's vision for 2025 is that currently, like this is Polkadot today, right? You can think of everything that I said up until now. You can think each one of these are like the roll-ups, right? The parachains, right? And each one is a specialized blockchain. And the relay chain actually has a lot of features right now. It has message passing. So like the two main tenets of Polkadot, like that it kind of like sold to the world is economic security, right? That you got that $1 billion network that's putting the finality stamp on your parachain's block. So as a parachain, your only responsibility is to keep the parachain alive, keep the data alive and sending the blocks so that they can get finalized by this $1 billion network relay chain, right? The other tenet is that all these sharded blockchains, these parachains, rollups that exist on Polkadot, right? Because it's connected to Polkadot, they're interoperable, meaning they can communicate with each other in a secure fashion via a protocol called XCMP. And XCMP is the protocol for interoperability amongst the parachains, right? So if you have a parachain that wants to communicate, let's say, with the people chain, identity chain, maybe you want to create an identity on the people chain, right? You can do that via the XCMP protocol and via the XCM language. So XCM is like the language in which you can write uh, these queries, these instructions that you want to send to another chain, right? So the relay chain right now takes care of that. So if you as a parachain want to write some XCM, it'll go through the relay chain, right? The relay chain is also taking care of, you can see in this diagram, balances. So accounts, the balances on accounts, governance, as we saw, right? Like It's staking, right? It's a proof of stake network. So like if I go back to this UI, just to actually show you this stuff, right? Uh, from a technical perspective, like if I go to chain state, right? This is the Polkadot Relay chain state. All these modules, these Rust modules, they're existing on the relay chain. So for example, treasury functionality is on the relay chain. The XCM stuff that I told you about is on the relay chain, right? If we keep going, there's things like we said balances. So like an account's balance, like let's see what my balance is. It's, I don't know. uh, okay, this is a developer account, so it doesn't have anything, but you can see that's where the balance would be, right? Like right here, right? Or here, you know? Um, what else is here? Staking is on here, staking functionality, uh, various other types of functionality, system level functionalities on here, right? So multi-sig, okay. Uh, let's see, crowd loans. That's getting kind of like, you know, you could still use it, but we're more in favor of core time now. Balances. So this is different. So this is slightly different. So what you see here, it's actually connected to the system palette here. Maybe I show you that in another time, but uh, the system.account is where the balance is actually being held here. Okay. Auctions, that used to be for Polkadot V1 and some other things. So this was never really meant to be like what the relay chain was supposed to be about, right? So the relay chain is exactly what its name is, right? It's relaying messages. It's relaying the the blocks, right? It's finalizing the blocks and kind of relaying them. And that's really what the relay chain was supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to have like all these other features like governance, treasury, and so on, staking, right? So with this roadmap that you see here on the screen, uh, if you look at 2025, what's going to happen is that the parity, the core engineers, they're going to migrate a lot of that functionality into Asset Hub, the Parachain Asset Hub. So you're going to have a lot of that stuff be migrated to Asset Hub so that the relay chain can do what it's really good at doing, right? Message passing and finalization, right? So that's on the roadmap for 2025. And Asset Hub will most likely be renamed to like something like Polkadot Hub. And you'll have one parachain, one blockchain where you can interact with all that functionality. Okay. So also on a roadmap is to include Solidity smart contracts on Asset Hub so that you can use Solidity on Polkadot natively. So Solidity already exists on Polkadot. If we look here, actually on parachains, there's a parachain here. If we scroll down, let's see, where is it? Many parachains, right? It should be Moonbeam. So this parachain, if we click on that, this parachain is a Solidity parachain, and it uses EVM, right? And it's built with Substrate, and it's a parachain, right? It's connected to Polkadot, so you can actually write Solidity smart contracts and execute it on this parachain, which is pretty cool. I like this parachain a lot. So what Parity is working on is the ability for you to run Solidity on a Polkadot parachain, but not with EVM, not the Ethereum virtual machine. Parity is building its own virtual machine called PolkaVM, PVM, which is a lot more efficient and a lot faster than EVM. All right, so you're going to be able to write Solidity smart contracts, and it's on the roadmap to get deployed on Asset Hub, and you're going to be able to run these contracts. Here's Asset Hub uh, on this parachain using the PVM technology, which will be blazing fast. So blazing fast Solidity with compatibility with all the Ethereum tooling, including MetaMask, right? So that's coming. The community is super hyped for that. So that's on the roadmap also for 2025. So what else? So just we talked about, the governance system. and how it's the most advanced decentralized on-chain resilient governance system. Okay. One example, another example is that there was this referenda. You can see it's executed. Actually, I believe it's here. I have it here somewhere. Um, so it's called the spamming. So I think this is a really good example of an on-chain proposal, right? Where it was more of an experimental thing. The community was like, "Hey, we were getting this when I was working at Parity. Like, we were getting these questions, like, oh, what's the TPS, right? Where teams were looking to build on a blockchain. Which blockchain should they build on? Which one is the most scalable, right? What's your TPS, right? Which that's a whole like discussion in itself because what are we talking about when we say TPS, right? Like if I go to the UI here and I say, okay, let's do TPS on something simple like system.remark, right? Where it's like literally you're just making a remark on the chain, right? Or are you doing a benchmark on TPS where it's like um, a batched transaction, right? Like various transactions batched together, or are you doing TPS on a more sophisticated transaction, right? So TPS in itself, it needs to be really standardized in order for you to compare the different chains. But there was this proposal, this on-chain proposal, where it's like, hey, community, let's test the TPS on Polkadot, and it was created on chain. And just to note, it was actually created on Polkadot's Canary network. So Polkadot has the Polkadot relay chain. So if we go back here, Polkadot relay chain, if I want to connect, you know, uh, but it also has a Canary network called Kusama. So if I collapse this, you can see here Kusama. So Kusama, for those of you who don't know, like a canary is like when there were coal mines. I mean, there's still coal mines, and people were digging for coal. They used the bird, the canary bird. They would take it into the coal mines because they'd look at the bird. If the bird died, that means that there was like this gas, right, that could kill humans. And so it was an indicator that it's like, okay, stuff has gone wrong. We got to exit, right? So Kusama is Polkadot's Canary network. It's an experimental network with real economic value. Okay, so it's a real relay chain with parachains that have real, tokens with real values, economic value behind them. And it moves fast. Its governance moves faster. Like if we look at Kusama, switch to it, the relay chain, and it was meant to be like an experimental, like where people should experiment and like create like these crazy, like awesome, like Web3 projects on, right? It has its own treasury. Like you can see treasury, and you can see it's got 342,000 KSM, right? Like how much is one KSM? I don't know. Let's see right now, KSM. Like $27. Okay. So today it's like $27, one KSM. So 342,000, right? Like let's do the math times 27. So almost 10 million, right? So it's got a treasury, 10 million, but you can see it moves faster, right? Polkadot was we were looking at 24 days. Here it's already at 6 days, right? 6 day spend period, and it's almost there. So that's available. It's got its own governance. So actually, if we go back to that Polkadot, let's see, launch app, scroll down, Kusama. So this UI is easier to look at, right? So same thing, like very similar, right? The only difference is that we're on Kusama, not Polkadot. You can see up here, and you can see what's available. Oh, you can see the price here, next burn, right? So it's like code wise, it's two different runtimes. So, for example, I guess that's now it's important to note that governance also has a technical fellowship. So technical fellowship is a group of like you could say like the top engineers in the Polkadot that are contributing to the Polkadot SDK, and they have ranks, right? There's a membership rank, and there's perks that go along with these ranks. There's even some on-chain code that's um, going to be, they're going to have salaries according to the rank, so you'll get some amount, because these are the people building Polkadot like on a big level, right? Here's Gav, right? So they got ranks, and they're part of the governance, but they don't have like you could say that like, they have no power. Like the way that the fellowship works is that the technical fellowship is that at most they can indicate almost like Oracle, right? They can indicate they're like, hey, we really suggest for you to pass this referenda, but they can't pass it themselves, right? They can vote on it with their own personal account, but they can't pass it themselves as part of as the technical fellowship. But they can indicate like, hey, this upgrade would be really good for the network. It's it's a technical upgrade, and we really suggest it. And then the community can use that and say, okay, yeah, let's approve this, right? So the fellowship is there to kind of like steward Polkadot from the technical perspective, and anyone can apply to the fellowship, the technical fellowship. But there are some requirements of like you need to like in order to get which rank. Like you can start with rank one, or you can apply directly to rank four if you feel like you're there. But you need to show your contributions, right? And based on your contributions, if you have some good contributions, open source to Polkadot, then you'll be voted into the rank, into uh, the technical fellowship. Okay. So going back to the the governance here. So if we look at like it's got similar tracks here, right? Big spender, medium spender, and so on. And you can see similar things like here's a referenda we can look at, right? Similar thing, you can cast your vote and so on. So it's there, the governance is there. So what happened was there was a referenda on spammy, right? What they called spammy, right? They wanted to check the TPS on Polkadot through Kusama, right? Because Kusama is like it's pretty much the same thing as Polkadot. It's got its own runtime. So for example, if you say Polkadot fellowship runtime. So the Polkadot runtimes are not owned by Parity, right? Because like if you look at the source code Polkadot SDK, it's in the Parity Tech organization, okay? But if you look at the actual runtime for Polkadot, right, the Polkadot relay chain, it's in a different org. It's in the fellowships, the on-chain collective, their fellowship, technical fellowship. It's in that org, not so it's it's part of that on-chain collective runtimes. And here you can see the runtimes for the different chains. You can see relay chains, and you can see there's one for Kusama and one for Polkadot. So they are different runtimes, but a lot of it is similar. Okay. Because we want to keep it that way, at least like, for the beginning before it differentiates too much. But it's up to Polkadot governance how we want these runtimes to evolve, right? And you may have noticed that there's one here called system parachains. There is a concept of system parachains. System parachains are like common good parachains. Parachains that the community has decided that's like, hey, this would be really beneficial for Polkadot as a whole. And so you can see Asset Hub is one of them. There's one for Bridge Hub and collectives and one core time and such. Okay, people, right? So there is a concept of a system parachain. The community can create a new system parachain. You can use Treasury. You can create a proposal if you want to build a system parachain, right? Or you can have your own independent parachain that you build on your own with your own team. So going back to the spamming. So this happened. It got executed, right? The funds got executed. Like, why do they need funds? Because remember, Kusama has real economic value. So if you want to create one transaction on Kusama, it's going to cost money, right? It's going to cost KSM. So uh, they got this proposal approved. So they got the funding so that they could actually do the spamming, right? And they did it. So There's actually polkadot.com/spamming if you want to read about it. And what did they test? They tested the scalability of the network, right? So most chains out there, they'll say, this is what we're capable of. But they did it on a test network locally or on in the cloud AWS, right? They tested it like that. They never tested it in the actual, real world production, right? This was actually done in real world production to test the scalability, TPS. And um, the report is here if you want to read it. It's very cool, very interesting. And proof of performance, 140,000 TPS showcases Polkadot's real world scalability, right? There's actually a chart here. So here you can see Polkadot's Kusama, 10,000 transactions per second, right? And that 10,000, these are non-batch transactions at 15% of the capacity of the network, right? So at 23% of the capacity of the network, we're already hitting 143,000 batch transactions per second, okay? And theoretically, we never got to it in production, but theoretically, if we were going up with these numbers, it would get to 623,000 max transactions per second. Okay, so that's pretty that's pretty good for performance and scalability. Okay, so that's there. It happened through an on-chain decision through on-chain governance, and you can see here. Let's see, Parity tweeted about it. Yeah, okay. So that's pretty cool. So when you're building on Polkadot, right, you're building on a performant network that can scale. So how do you build on Polkadot? So there's two main ways that you could build on Polkadot, you'd say. One is to build a blockchain. So you could build a parachain, right? This rollup that we're talking about. And Polkadot has really great documentation for that. You saw the Rust docs that I showed you. That's a little bit more technical. Like I would start with the Polkadot docs. So I think it's docs.polkadot.com. And I would start there. The Polkadot docs are a little bit more high level. You can say start building, and then you're going to get some really nice documentation on how to build, like from a blockchain perspective. You can see here parachains, introduction to Polkadot SDK, and the different concepts, right? Now, the other way to build on Polkadot, which is in the works right now, is to do the Solidity smart contracts, right? I have another video that's going to go out with this, and it actually tells you how to write a Solidity smart contract that will run on PVM on Polkadot, right? And that's actually in my YouTube. It's already there if you're interested. Uh, it's Learn with Bruno, how to spin up Polkadot relay chain. Oh, yeah. So there's one called How to Deploy a Solidity smart contract on Polkadot. This is actually experimental. This
Guys,
is,
you can now
yeah, not this person, but this is actually live on Asset Hub's development network. Okay. So there's some finishing touches that the core team, the Parity core team, are working on before it goes into production. But this video will actually teach you how to deploy on uh, the development network that's in the cloud. Like I can show you here. Let's see here. Open new tab. Open up the Polkadot.js apps, and we're going to see here once it loads. I'm going to take you to the West End relay chain. So what we call West End, that's like development relay chain that's in the cloud, right, for test purposes. So you can see here, there's Polkadot, there's Kusama, and then here's West End, right? If I expand, there's West End. It's a test network. This one has no economic value, right? So it's really for testing purposes. And this is the relay chain. You can see I'm connected, right? It's the relay chain. So that's there. What we want is Asset Hub. So this is Asset Hub that we're connecting to on West End. And this one has the PVM code in there that you can use Solidity. And if you want to learn how to do that, I have a video tutorial right there. That'll guide you step by step on how to compile and deploy a Solidity contract to Asset Hub. Okay. So if you want to be ahead of the curve before this stuff goes into production, that's the other way. And probably the recommended way to get started if you're new to Polkadot. Okay. Uh, the blockchain stuff, the parachain stuff, the learning curve is a lot more, right? And then the other way is if you are a JavaScript developer, right, like TypeScript, there's an excellent library, TypeScript library that was developed by Parity and is being developed by Parity still. Like more features are coming out. It's a state-of-the-art library called Pappy, Polkadot API, and you can see it's got a lot of cool features. Um, so if you want to use JavaScript to interact with Polkadot, right, like the RPC nodes, and create an application around that, that's also there available for you. Okay. There's actually many, many tools in the ecosystem, which brings us to the next topic, right? Say you have an idea. I want to build something on Polkadot, right? I know I can do it, right? How do you get funding for your project, right? So the way you get funding is I kind of showed you, right? One way is through the treasury, but the treasury can be intimidating at first. The recommended way, actually, um, so like one was treasury, right? You can either go through Polkadot Treasury, or you can go through like Kusama Treasury for like if you want to, different dynamics happening there in terms of governance. It's up to you which one you want to go. There's a lot more activity happening on Polkadot Treasury than the Kusama, so it's up to your strategy. But if you're just starting out, like maybe you're a developer and you're not that great at governance and things like that, like that was myself. But you want to build something, right? There's actually this new initiative, these new grants that just came out. They're called open source grants, and it's a committee that they got this proposal funded by the Treasury. And let's see if I can pull it up here. It's like on a smaller scale, it's got its requirements, but it's aiming to support up to 15 projects with a total of up to 30K uh, payable in DOT. So not a bad way to get started with some open source work. I would actually recommend starting with this. And you can see there's already 2 PRs there. Let's look at this one. So pretty cool, right? Like this is like to Solana VM on Polkadot SDK. So this team here is looking to build a Solana VM on Polkadot SDK, and they have their application here, right? And so this is a great way to get started. This is where I recommend, and start here, right? Try to get that to fund your project. Once you've gotten there, um, then the other way is there's these Web3 grants. So the Web3 Foundation, they have these grants that you can utilize. Actually, if we open up Web3, you can see there over 1,500 applications, over 600 projects funded, right? And you can see there's a lot of documentation. So I would say like this is another alternative or next step. And this one you can apply for and get some funding, right? And then once you've got that credibility, like, okay, I've delivered on a Web3 grant, right? I've delivered on that open source grant, right? And you got some credibility and you feel more confident, then I would say like go for the treasury. Now, that's just my recommendation. Some teams just go directly for the treasury, so it's up to you, right? But those are the different avenues that you have to get started with a project, right? So there are those options for you to get funding. All right, so you can start building. And then last but not least, people ask me about Polkadot wallets, right? Non-custodial wallets. My three favorite, excuse me, my three favorite ones are there on the screen. So there's more than those three on the screen, but those are my three favorites. The first one is the Polkadot JS extension. That one, people, the community, the developers, we just use that for development purposes usually. I mean, you can use it for production too, like, to use around. But this one I use a lot for development purposes. You can see, I think I have it here, right? All development accounts, okay? So that you can test stuff out. Whereas like for yourself or for like the users in the ecosystem, I really like Talisman. They're a great wallet, great UX, great UI. or the other one is Nova Wallet, also great UX, great UI, and great features. Okay, so those are the two wallets, and with the Solidity, the Asset Hub Solidity work, you can actually use. It's also compatible, right, with MetaMask, right? Because then it wouldn't, like I said, the tooling is compatible because the way that that PVM stuff is working is that this node, the the node has on the side, it has an RPC server, an Ethereum RPC server running, right? That's how it gets that compatibility with the ETH tooling. So you can use MetaMask to interact and to deploy Solidity smart contracts. Okay. So that's it for my presentation. I just wanted to give you a snapshot of like Polkadot. What is Polkadot? Where Polkadot is heading? And hopefully that gets you going so that like you can start building on Polkadot. If you want to learn more or you have questions, if you have technical questions and you're like building a blockchain, right? And you have technical questions, there's a substrate.stack exchange where you can ask technical questions and the community is pretty good about answering them. So that's where you can go for technical support. Uh, the other place that you can go if you have any follow-up questions, where I will be actually. So that's, yeah, that's the Stack Exchange. The other place you could go is in this Telegram group that I've created, Polkadot Study Group. So you can join the Polkadot Study Group. Polkadot Study Group is a group of like-minded individuals that want to study Polkadot, go more in depth technically into Polkadot. You can see there's some discussion here about the tutorial, right? The how to get the benchmarks to work and such. So great community. I hope more people join it. It's still early. There's also some projects that we're working on, like CLI type of stuff. There's discussion on AI and NFTs. Like there's actual like interesting like, I was talking about an asset-backed NFT, and then Chris is saying like, okay, that's something similar exists in Solidity, and then it's like, at what point does an NFT stop becoming an NFT? So if you like that kind of conversation and technical conversation, drop in, say hello. Feel free to ask questions, especially if you're new, right? For me, when I was starting out in Substrate and Polkadot, I was like, sometimes I wasn't, I thought like my questions were dumb questions, and I was afraid of asking. And to tell you the truth, on the Stack Exchange, we need better, more newcomer friendly questions. Uh, how to, like, for example, this got closed. Well, I need to update this. How to become a developer or a substrate developer. I think there was a post that I did about this a while back. I need to update it. It's not very, the links may be a little bit off, but there's some links in here that like this doesn't work anymore. It's now docs.polkadot.io. Yes, actually, the Parity Tech YouTube channel is an excellent way. That's how I started learning about Polkadot, the architecture, and the technical components. But I also recommend my YouTube. I got some interesting content in there about the tech stuff. And yeah, some of these links need to be updated. So if you're new to Rust, right, definitely learn about the Rust book. You can read the Rust book, excellent resource. There's also the Polkadot Blockchain Academy. You can join. They have different cohorts, and let's see. But honestly, just drop into the Telegram group, and we'll be happy to guide you from there if you have any questions and point you to the resources, because there's a lot more than what I just said, right? There's a lot more tooling. There's a lot more going on and happening. But I'd say like what I gave you today, they're good starting points. Okay. Love to hear your feedback and hope that you build something in the ecosystem. Thank you.